So we're here with Vrndavan Brannon Parker discussing his upcoming book, The Serpent, the Lion, the Disc, and the Eagle.
Yeah, so I was able to find that the supreme God of diverse cultures from all over the world, whether you look in South America or Australia or Siberia or India or Egypt or Greece, all have the same symbols: the serpent, the eagle, the lion, and the disc. And the supreme goddess always has the symbol of the red rose, the red lotus, the rosette, the shooting star. And we find the same pattern everywhere. And not only that, we find again and again that the supreme God is always colored blue. And then we always find too that the creation stories are very similar. And so there's different theories that they have as to why this is, but my theory, without getting into the other theories, is that because the transcendent reality was perceived by diverse people from all over the world, that same transcendent reality and those same experiences were recorded by diverse people all over the world.
Do you have any examples of a blue divinity? I mean, obviously everyone knows about Krishna and Vishnu being blue, but what about outside of India?
Well, for example, Zeus is traditionally colored blue. And if we go to Quetzalcoatl, the supreme god with the Mayans and Central American natives, he's colored also blue and green. And supreme creator god in the ancient Chinese, pre-Buddhist tradition is blue. We also have the secret name, the shamanic name for the supreme creator god, Nagiskanskan, within the Sioux American, Plains American Indian tradition, is blue, and his very name, Skan, means blue, right? And again we find this pattern. And another thing that's a key link, why the eagle, because all these forms of supposedly diverse gods, not only are they all blue, they always are associated with an eagle who is their carrier.
So, for those familiar with Hinduism, we would think of Garuda, the divine mount of Vishnu.
Yes.
So,
And the serpent's Anantashesha. And then the disc, of course, is the disc of God, the disc of Vishnu, which is a very esoteric thing. I can't get into it right now, but basically the name of this disc is Sudarshan, which means auspicious vision. And for example, if we look at our own eyeballs, they're shaped like disc also, and they're actually the element and energy connected with fire, if I believe. And so there's a very esoteric meaning behind that. And then the lion, we know about Narasingha, Krishna's form as the half man, half lion, but there's also an esoteric secret behind this. This is actually Krishna as time. When Krishna revealed his universal form in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked him, trembling in fear, "Who are you? And what is your mission?" And Krishna replied, "Time I am, destroyer of worlds, and I have come to engage all living beings."
As that was quoted by Robert Oppenheimer after witnessing the first atomic test.
Yes, he remembered this verse. And so the thing is Krishna revealed himself as all the beast of all devouring time. And so this is the lion in the title. And so we go all over the world, we'll see the same phenomenon of the deities of supposedly diverse religions, but always above them there will be a beast-like figure. Entrances to churches, gargoyles, all these things are actually representations of God as Krishna, as time, the devourer of everything, merciless, but still it's the supreme God. And then the deeper esoteric meaning to time, God as time, is the eternal circle, Ananta. So all of these, the serpent, the eagle, the lion, and the disc, are all about time worship, to be honest. And we find them one of the most esoteric essences of this understanding of God in the shape of the disc, represented aniconically by the icon of the disc, is in the Rasa Mandala, the divine dance of Sri Sri Radha Krishna and the gopis. So it goes very deep. It's a very esoteric subject.
The lion, what about the Lion of Judah, Rastafarianism? Many of our viewers probably can think of that. Would that also?
Yeah, it's directly related. The Lion of Judah, basically, even from my understanding, the word Hari means lion in Hebrew. right? And in Sanskrit, Hari means lion as well. There's a beautiful story when Sri Krishna was coming to meet Srimati Radharani, and they had a very playful relationship. So Krishna knocks on the door, and Radha's like, "Who is it?" And he says, I think he said, "Oh, it's Madhu or something." And then she's like, "Oh, I don't want any bees to come bother me," because the word Madhu also means bee, I think. And then she kept saying, she kept, teasing him. Like, finally he says, "Oh, it's Hari." And then she's like, "Oh, I don't want any dangerous lions to come in here either. Go away," like this. And so this is confirmation that this word Hari, name of God, also means lion. And coincidentally, Eli, like when Jesus was on the cross, he called out to God. He actually called out the name in Sanskrit, Hare, Hare, Eloi, Eloi, right? Because L and R are the same linguistically. Mm-hmm. And then in ancient Greek, this same Eli, Hari was Helios, which is, I talk about in the book, it's not the sun god. And it's just been misinterpreted only within the last 2,000 years as the sun god. But if you go back 3,000 years and beyond, Heliopolitanism was centered on God, not the sun.
So Heli would be Greek of Hari.
Helios. And the Roman way to say Hari is Arios. Arius. Helios in Greek, Arius in Roman, Latin, Eli in Hebrew, Hari in Sanskrit. And then in the ancient Egyptian, they have all these crazy speculations because they keep finding the two letters H and R as the descriptor names of all these supposedly polytheistic gods. But the fact is they are all forms of Hari, and we know that because they are all given the title HR at the beginning or end of their names. And so the truth is these scholars can only read the consonants of the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. They don't know the vowels. And so they intentionally don't want to say, "Oh, maybe it's Hari or Hara, Shiva or Vishnu." And so they make up Horus and Heru and this type of stuff, and they add their own vowels to it.
Interesting you mentioned Horus, because the Horus symbolism famously is the eye as sun, and also the hawk, which is similar to an eagle.
Exactly.
And also the eye could be related to the disc, the sun disc.
Exactly. And iconically, in iconography, the eagle, the hawks, falcons, even vultures, even roosters, they're all the same. So sometimes you'll see like the ancient Hebrew god Abraxas, or he was God as time. He was pictured as an eagle resting on a serpent. And God as time throughout the world, whether it's Simhamukha, which means lion face, which is a blue-bodied god of time in Tibetan. We find the same Zerfan in ancient Roman Mithraism, ancient Persian time worship. God always has a lion head, human body, with a serpent coiled around him and resting over his head, and he's always holding a wheel, a disc, or a globe. So it's Vishnu.
Vishnu. Now, with regard to the serpent, many of our viewers may be familiar with the reptilian theories of David Icke, which looks at the ancient archaeological evidence for UFOs and reptilian beings. And so basically any kind of snake symbolism, they also relates to the Garden of Eden, the snake that tempted, and then there's like the sinister connotation to the snake. But you're using the serpent to represent the supreme God. So how do you respond to these competing theories?
Yes, well, first I want to say that there have been kind of digressions where people will use the same forms, the same deities, and perform abominable human sacrifices. And so a lot of times the unfortunate fact is modern scholars will find examples of these heresies, these heretical versions of the original religion, and highlight them as the original. And so the fact is God in the form of the divine serpent is one of the most ancient understandings and representations of the supreme God. This is the first incarnation of God as the divine serpent, who's called Ananta, means unending, right? And he supports everything upon him, and every avatar of God is a form of this divine serpent, Anantashesha. And so we have these theories of David Icke's, who have taken a lot of this Vedic evidence and focused on extreme examples of heretical abuses of the same tradition, or he's actually taken direct Vedic evidence and misinterpreted it. And basically, he's dehumanizing the history of the world. And basically, I'll have people come at me, and I'm coming from an ancient tradition, an unbroken tradition that's a minimum of 5,000 years old. I have scriptures to back me up. I have histories to back me up. I have a whole living civilization of 800 million people who still follow this tradition, backing me up in my perspective on what the sacred snake worship means. On the origins of religion, I have the Vedic scriptures as my guide, as my template, right? And what does David Icke's have? Really, think about it. Okay, maybe he has a good book, maybe he has a good theory, but really, let's be honest. Let's put this give it a fair hearing in the court of, as in a court. You know, we could have our emotional belief systems, or we can go by the facts. So David Icke's, I mean, the guy is still alive, I believe. He came up with this recently, and I'm talking about a tradition that is represented by an unbroken lineage from teacher to student that goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years. And through our Sanskrit language, we've been able to record ancient wisdom through the use of poetry. For example, I'm speaking a lot here, and if I asked any of you to duplicate what I was saying, it would be very difficult. But right now, if I were to sing you a poem or a song, you would have a much easier time remembering the song and repeating it to other people. So this was a key method by which the ancient Vedic seers and rishis recorded the ancient Vedic scientific wisdom, was through the use of Sanskrit poetry. And so this knowledge has been preserved, has been maintained through this methodology for thousands upon thousands of years. And this is what I access to reach my conclusions in my book.
And on that point, so you've rejected what you see as misinterpretations done by other researchers like I, but is there any validity for perhaps a Hindu or Vedic understanding of kind of malefic forces at work in the world today? We were discussing earlier these kind of black money and black op corruptions.
Yeah, going on in India now. Like, the fact is you know, some of the greatest demonic leaders in the history of the world were great followers of the Vedic path. I'm not denying that. But what I am saying is that, yes, there are examples of Jarasandha who kidnapped hundreds of kings in order to offer them as sacrifices. And basically, there are, you know, great and powerful beings like Ravan, who were great devotees of Shiva, who performed great austerities, who knew all the scriptures, right? But he was the king of a cannibal race of people who were proud to kill and eat people, you know? And so this is a fact. But the main point that I'm trying to bring up about this is that these people were following something. They were giving their own twisted interpretation to the original template. They were not following the original template, nor were they the source of the original template, nor have any of them ever claimed to be the source, right? They were all following something that existed already. The original template of Sanatana Dharma, Vedic tradition, civilization, ritual, belief, culture, was already in place. And so these people harnessed that same knowledge and technology and abused it for their own ends.
And so, what about the theorists that, even if you take Icke's theory away, is there any Vedic or Hindu support for the idea of reptilian demonic race?
Well, I mean, the Nagas are there, but from my research, they're not considered a demonic race. Some of them are, you know, good, some of them are bad, kind of like the fairies or leprechauns or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And we have cases like where the Prince Arjuna, he married a Naga princess, right? And then we'll have, you know, cases of, Vasuki, he's the king of the Nagas. And I think some of the snake worship we see can be worship of Vasuki, but again, Lord Krishna says that's another thing. Krishna, the I am verses in the Gita, Krishna says, fish and aquatic creatures, I'm the shark. Immovable objects, I'm the Himalayas. And serpents, I'm Vasuki. And so all these beings and forces of nature that were identified by Lord Krishna as himself were recognized as worshipable throughout history. And a big one, which a lot of people are confused by, is Krishna says, among mankind, I am the monarch. And so this is why kings were worshipped as direct representatives of God. When you worship a righteous king, you are worshiping a form of God.
So that brings us to the topic of Hindu kingship. And we know in 2008, the last Hindu state, Nepal, the monarchy was abolished and became a secular republic. What ramification does this have for the future of Hinduism without a Hindu state or a Hindu king to uphold it?
Well, we have this misconception that Hinduism is just a belief system, a religion. But in fact, it's a full spectrum, civilizationally based tradition that covers every aspect of society. In other words, there's a Hindu or a Vedic way to have education, a Hindu Vedic way to have sex, a Hindu Vedic way to get married, a Hindu Vedic way to farm, a Hindu Vedic way to run a government. You cannot separate the functioning of society from the so-called religion of Hinduism. And so what we have in the Hindu ideal of kingship is someone whose sole responsibility is the condition and the well-being of the citizens of the country. And this does not just mean people and human beings, it means the animals, the trees, the environment. This is the king's role. And the reason royalty and kings and queens have so much luxury and so many people at their command is not so they can live large and enjoy themselves. It's just that their work is so vital and so important because they need to take care of the needs of the whole nation that they don't have time for petty stuff like shopping, cooking, cleaning, that kind of taking the kids to school and back. And so they need other people to take care of those day-to-day functions of their lives so that they can focus 100% on their duties as the monarch and the servant of the people. I mean, we have cases in ancient times where if someone's child died untimely, it was considered the fault of the monarch. True Vedic kingdom, no citizen can go hungry, lack education, lack health benefits, or lack a home. This has to be guaranteed to every citizen. And the heart of the city, the heart of the nation, is the temple.
Now, these are very big issues even today: housing, education, healthcare. This is a problem in Hawaii, in America, and across the world. Do you think, is it possible that these Hindu ideals of governance or kingship could be applied in non-Hindu societies? And what would that look like?
Yeah, because this name Hindu is a misnomer also. What we're talking about is the actual functioning of anything. That's what Vedic means. The true nature of it. Like this word verdict and Vedic, it's the same thing. And so people need to get rid of this idea, this is the Hindu way. It's just that what we call the Hindus are the people who best preserved the ancient ways and methodologies that actually worked, methodologies that were in harmony with society, with nature. And so, for example, we have all these ideas from Hindu governance, like let's take, feeding people. So we have everyone famously, Hindus are mostly vegetarian, and so we know the amount of resources it takes to create one hamburger compared to the amount of resources it takes to make a bowl of grain for one person to eat. It's a vast difference. Basically, you need 100 bowls of cereal to make one hamburger, basically, if I remember correctly. You need an aircraft carrier amount of water just to feed one beef cow, versus that same amount of water can grow acres and acres and acres of food to feed people. But instead of growing food to feed people, they grow food to feed beef cattle. so that beef people can eat the beef. And so right there we have an example of so-called Hindu ethos and Hindu ideology, or whatever you want to call it, that actually is beneficial to the world at large. And you know what I mean, like Prince Charles himself, he speaks about how Hinduism is one of those ancient root cultures that inherently built within the Hindu culture are solutions to our modern day problems. And so he personally urged the Hindus not to forget and give up their cultures, because it's not just beneficial to Hindus. What's inbuilt within Hindu civilization is beneficial to the world at large. So that's a fact.